Imagine lying in bed tonight and sensing something quietly unfamiliar. Stillness, no pressure building, no internal alarm counting minutes, no urgent pull toward the bathroom breaking the night apart. This moment does not arrive by chance, and it is not a trick of willpower. It begins when the body stops misreading signals. Waking to urinate at night is rarely about excess urine alone. It is about confusion inside the nervous system. The bladder is listening constantly to the brain, and when the brain is overstimulated, the bladder becomes vigilant, interpreting even mild sensations as emergencies. Modern life trains the body to stay alert long after the lights go out, carrying stress into tissues that were designed to soften at night. When that tension persists, the body interrupts sleep as a protective reflex, not a failure. What is remarkable is how quickly this pattern can change when the body receives a clearer message. Gentle, intentional movement and breath do not force the bladder to behave. They remind it of context. They tell the nervous system that the day is complete, that the environment is stable, and that no action is required. In that reassurance, urgency fades, hormones rebalance, and the body begins to trust the night again, allowing rest to deepen naturally, without struggle or control. The first movement works not through strength, but through permission. Slow diaphragmatic breathing paired with conscious pelvic relaxation changes the internal physics of the body in subtle but powerful ways. As the diaphragm descends, pressure within the abdomen redistributes, easing downward force on the bladder. At the same time, the pelvic floor is encouraged to soften rather than brace, breaking a habit many people do not realize they carry all day. Chronic clenching keeps the bladder in a state of readiness, as if the body expects danger rather than rest. From a neurological perspective, deep breathing shifts dominance away from the striven sympathetic system and toward the parasympathetic state where repair occurs. This transition lowers sensory amplification, meaning the bladder sends fewer exaggerated signals to the brain. Importantly, relaxation here is not collapse or weakness. It is coordination. When breath and pelvic movement are synchronized, the bladder neck settles and detrusor activity quiets. The body responds to this harmony quickly, often within minutes, because the nervous system recognizes familiar safety cues. Over time, this practice retrains sensation itself, so fullness is perceived accurately rather than urgently. In that recalibration, the bladder relearns patience, and the mind relearns trust, allowing sleep to unfold without interruption, guided by physiology rather than fear. The second movement appears simple, almost unrelated to the bladder, yet it addresses one of the most overlooked causes of nighttime urination: fluid redistribution. Throughout the day, gravity quietly pulls fluid into the lower legs, where it accumulates between tissues and within the venous system. When you lie down at night, that stored fluid re-enters circulation, increasing blood volume and signaling the kidneys to filter more aggressively. The result is increased urine production, just as the body is meant to be resting. Gentle calf and ankle activation before bed shifts this process earlier, using muscle contraction to return fluid while you are still upright. This reduces the nighttime workload placed on the kidneys and lowers the pressure placed on the bladder during sleep. From a circulatory perspective, the calf muscles function as a secondary heart, pumping blood and lymph upward with each contraction. When this pump is idle all evening, fluid waits until night to move, disrupting sleep. By engaging it briefly and deliberately, you respect the body's timing rather than fighting its design. The nervous system also benefits, as rhythmic movement calms vascular tone and improves feedback between muscles and circulation. In this quiet cooperation, the body resolves excess fluid before bedtime, allowing the bladder to remain calm and the night to remain undisturbed. The third movement addresses a subtler influence on nighttime urgency: the communication pathways between the bladder and the brain. The nerves that regulate bladder sensation travel through the lower spine and sacral region, areas that often become stiff from prolonged sitting and limited hip movement. When these structures lose mobility, nerve signaling can become distorted, amplifying sensations that would otherwise remain quiet. Slow, controlled hip rotation and gentle spinal release reduce mechanical compression and restore fluid exchange around the nerves. This improves signal clarity rather than simply reducing sensation. From a neurological standpoint, clearer signals mean fewer false alarms. The bladder may still fill gradually, but the brain no longer interprets that filling as an immediate threat. Movement here also affects muscle tone around the pelvis, reducing reflexive tightening that feeds urgency. Importantly, this is not about stretching aggressively or pushing into discomfort. The nervous system responds best to slow, predictable motion that confirms safety. As tension unwinds, sensory thresholds normalize, and urgency loses its intensity. Over repeated practice, the brain recalibrates its expectations, learning that nighttime does not require constant monitoring. In that recalibration, the bladder regains its natural capacity to wait, and sleep becomes deeper, quieter, and uninterrupted by unnecessary signals of urgency. What gives this brief practice its strength is not the movements themselves, but the message they carry. The body is always listening for context, constantly asking whether it should prepare for action or allow restoration. Nighttime urination often reflects a system that has forgotten how to fully disengage, shaped by years of responding quickly to demands, stress, and uncertainty. When you slow the breath, move fluid deliberately, and release tension from the nervous pathways, you are not correcting a flaw, you are restoring a rhythm. Hormones that regulate urine production, blood pressure, and sleep respond to this sense of order. Antidiuretic hormone stabilizes, heart rate lowers, and the bladder receives fewer signals to contract. More importantly, the brain stops scanning for problems that are not there. This shift is deeply human, rooted in the biology of safety. The body sleeps best when it feels protected, predictable, and over time, these 3 minutes become a ritual that signals closure to the day, separating activity from rest. In that separation, the bladder is no longer tasked with vigilance, and sleep is allowed to deepen without interruption. The night becomes a space for repair rather than response, guided by trust rather than urgency.